All righty, so we're live and welcome to MMBBA Live. I'm Shawn Williams. I'm your host and current president of the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association. So each week we bring conversations focused on advocacy, which we're going to be talking a lot about today, leadership and industry issues impacting our industry here in Maryland. So today's conversation is our formal wrap up of the 2026 Maryland legislative session. With the session now behind us, this is an important opportunity for us to everyone to step back, understand what's happened, and more importantly, what it means for our members moving forward. So today, I'm joined by two individuals who have been the center of MMBBA's advocacy efforts throughout the entire session, but over decades, throughout the years. And so, honored first to have Rich Green, who's our legislative chair for MMBBA, and he's with Presidential Bank Mortgage, who has helped lead the direction of our advocacy priorities. So, thank you for being with us this morning, Rich. And then also we have Dennis Rasmussen. So Dennis is our MMBBA. He's our lobbyist. He's with the Rasmussen Group, who brings on the ground perspective from Annapolis. And Dennis has been directly involved in the legislative process throughout the session. So again, really appreciate the two of you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. And so, as we do with every episode, we'll start with something quick before we jump in. So, who wants to go first and tell us an unexpected fun fact about yourselves that people don't know, but we probably should?
Well, I'll go. I'll go. So, yeah, this is a little known fact. I very much enjoy listening to music, going to concerts, and do it as much as they can. But the little known fact in there is that as growing up and really to this day, I've been into the Grateful Dead, and I'm a Deadhead.
Oh wow, I wouldn't have given you that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
little known fact. I used to hide behind it. I don't anymore.
No, no, yeah, that's authenticity is everything. So
You got it.
yeah. Oh wow. So the next conference, I was teasing you a little bit beforehand. I said the little known fact about you also is that you're a world class moderator.
Ah.
Um, and so we're gonna get you some Grateful Dead walk up music next time when you host one of the conferences. That's really cool stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Rich. How about you, Dennis?
Well, unknown fact, I'm an avid fisherman and I have my own boat I had for a number of years. But what I really enjoyed doing was every year we go to Canada and fish in the wilderness. So we fish about 150 miles south of the Arctic Circle. There's nobody around for hundreds of miles. Float plane drops us off at some lake out there, gives us a map, tells us to be at another location in 5 days, and we spend the 5 days going from lake to lake and fish. Fabulous fishing up there. It's very pristine. Each fisherman can catch. We only stop because our arms are tired. You can catch about 50 to 70 fish per day per fisherman. It's catch and release, of course, except for what you keep to eat. But you're out there by yourself for those 5 days, and it's really great. It's very exciting. I really enjoy it. Been doing it for years.
What do you catch?
Typically, you can catch northern pike, which has an average size of 4 to 5 feet,
Hmm.
uh, 50-pound lake trout, walleyes, which are really great eating fish. They have small fish called graylands that look like small sailfish. They come out of the water, but they're small. You use light tackle, and they may weigh like 2 pounds or something. And they're a lot of fun as well. So the fishing is really very good.
Interesting. That's really cool. I so the fun fact to me is not necessarily the fact that you're a fisherman. but it's the fact that you spend that time out in the wilderness, and I'm probably not gonna join that trip if you ever invite me. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, I'm going through a little bit of a midlife crisis and want to do some things that I've never done before. But Dennis, yeah, you don't have to worry about hurting my feelings if you don't ever invite me on that trip.
But there's always a group of 6 of us to go. And one of the things we always do is be sure we have a physician with us.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Next time I see you, you got to show me some pictures of that.
Yeah, I got some. Got plenty.
Sounds good. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. We have a really active legislative committee with the Maryland Mortgage Bankers and Brokers Association, and like I said, Rich Green is a co-chair and a really big part of helping us move things along with the assistance of our expert lobbyist here in Annapolis, Dennis Rasmussen. So, in this conversation, we'll try to make it as fluid as possible. You jump in and out however you see fit. I might ask the two of you some specific questions for you, but like, what is the committee? Why do we have it, and what do we do?
Well, one of the cornerstones of what the MMBBA does, and there's a few things, obviously, networking, education, and advocacy. And advocacy is really been a major part of what we do every year. We want to make sure that the industry is protected, that legislation coming up is putting us in the right direction, keeping homeownership going, and making sure that whatever is done, for future buyers, that their house financing is going to be sustainable. And so every week, and the session goes on for 90 days, and every week we work on legislation that has been introduced. And really, the way it works is on Fridays or Saturdays, we get a list. Dennis's office goes through everything that's been submitted and determines what is relevant to our industry and what isn't, and what we should look at. And that's in fact what we do. We assign to members of the committee an opportunity to review, take notes, and report that back for our conference call, which we have every Monday afternoon at 4. And Dennis is a huge part of it. I mean, he is feeding us the information, directing us and keeping us focused. And so we then have conversations on Monday, and we have people that join us, and we decide whether we're going to support a bill, whether we're going to oppose the bill, whether we're just going to sit back and watch it and see what might come next activity-wise on it, or we can oppose it. And from there we oftentimes will craft a letter reflecting that, whether it's support or opposition. And through Dennis's office, they work real hard. They help us make sure that it fits really what a legislator, how they should look at it, how they should see it. And that gets submitted. And that's just the beginning. That is just the beginning. We look for feedback, and it really is. It's a lot of work, but it's important that we get ourselves in front of the legislators, and that's really where it starts, at least on a weekly basis.
Right. And so, Dennis,
Sean, could I add another thing real quick?
Yeah, for sure. Because I wanted you to touch on what Rich was saying, because you're not an outsider, but kind of you're not in our industry, right? And I want you to also tell us why you think it's important too as well. But yes, please make a comment, but expand on what Rich is saying too as well, please.
No, happy to. As Rich knows, I've been representing MMBBA for decades. Literally, this is my 52nd year going to Annapolis, having been first elected in the House of Delegates back in the 70s. I've represented hundreds of clients over that period of time. And I have to say, in complete candor, working with your legislative committee has been a really great experience. I oftentimes use MMBBA as a model when I'm working with other clients, saying if you really want to have an effective, successful session, here's the model to follow. And I think it's been very predictive and productive, for the session. If I can leave you with just one basic premise to live by in Annapolis, is that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So it's important that you have a presence and you engage in these issues. As Rich just said, it's that, I have a working knowledge of your industry, but I'm not in your industry. And that's true with most legislators. It's a part-time General Assembly. This year we had almost 3,500 legislative initiatives that were introduced covering every spectrum of life and business in Maryland. And legislators simply don't have that knowledge. They don't have the benefit of the experience that you all have. So it's important that we stay engaged and we can educate and communicate that to each member of the General Assembly. We've done that for a number of years. And most importantly, now we have credibility with legislators. So when we come in with our information, they trust it. They don't question it. We're giving them the facts. Even when they ask me a question that I know is probably not going to be helpful for our bill, I give them the correct answer. And that builds the credibility and trust over the years. And it makes us effective. And your legislative committee stays very active. So they're building relationships as well. So when we have a combination of all those efforts, it really puts us in a good posture. And I think we've done very well over the years, and we had a very good session this year.
How long is the session?
It's 90 consecutive days. Starts in January, ends in April. It's in Annapolis, the oldest state house in America that's still in continued use. Many people may not realize it, but there's a lot of history. We kind of take it for granted because we're here. But the State House in Annapolis, George Washington resigned as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War. Benjamin Franklin designed the first lightning rod that's in the dome of the State House. Lots of factoids, I call them, and it's a great place to be. A lot of history, and and the fact that it's part-time, as I mentioned, legislators really want good information, and they don't want just information and lots of people writing them. They really want to have a source they can go to when they need an answer to some issue, particularly the committee staff that work on these bills. They don't hesitate to call me, pick up the phone and call me and say, this banking bill, whatever the number is, we have some questions. Can you give me some answers, or can you get answers and provide them to me? So it's been a good, I think the model we use works extremely well. You'd be surprised. Some companies engage me. I never hear from them for 90 days. They have one issue and say, this is what they want. I never hear from them. Some other clients want to get too involved, and that sometimes isn't productive. So it's a really good model.
You're being a little bit modest here about not being a part of our industry. While you aren't a part of the industry, you might as well be. And I got to tell you, and we'll get into this later in the discussion, but there was an appraisal bill up this year, and Dennis has learned more about appraisals and regulations that we have to face than you can imagine. And it went so far with the legislators. What Dennis is saying about the seat at the table is something that we work to earn. Dennis already has it. Okay. Because he's got relationships that go way back, but through our political action committee, we have an opportunity to make donations to politicians and get to meet them. go to their fundraisers, and really that sort of thing gets us a seat at the table. And as Dennis says, they want to learn, they want to know, they want to understand. They're not in our business, and that goes a long way. And it's great when they reach out to the committee, in particular Dennis, to learn more about something, so that whatever legislation they have, it can be crafted the right way. And that's a large effort, but it's that activity goes a long way.
Yeah. So I have a couple things. So thank you all because you throwing me some softballs. Thanks for that. So like as it relates to, you touched on the appraisal bill, right? So like this is like two or three questions into one. Like so we have like some major themes and priorities and such. And then like, but what pieces of legislation impacts or has impacted lenders, brokers, and housing ultimately that kind of moved forward this year or didn't move forward this year? Can you speak to any of those?
Certainly can. I mean, in particular, the appraisal bill would have kind of rewritten regulations that they were going to expect lenders to follow, such that they were going to open it up to where sellers and realtors and loan officers, lenders, anybody could communicate with an appraiser prior to a value being issued. And that's problematic. It's not even acceptable to the industry since Dodd-Frank. There's arm's length. And this bill was really born out of the thought that there was bias. And yes, there is. There's no question about it. But their solutions weren't really going to fit the way the industry operates. And we worked real hard on the education side with the delegate and her office to just try to share, hey, this is what we have to deal with. We understand. We want to work with you, but we can't step outside the guardrails that are set up. And there's already what they call a renegotiation of value process in place, has been, and it works. And we just wanted to mirror what's already out there and not reinvent the wheel to try to accomplish what they were looking for. And in the end, it came down, to the end of the session, and it did not go out of committee, I guess, for a vote, right?
Right. Did not.
I mean, Dennis totally led a great charge on this, and his relationship with the delegate, it speaks volumes of why we weren't faced with this bill being passed. Do we think it's going to come back in some different form next year? We do. It actually was here last year. It's going to be here next year. And I guess, Dennis, a lot of times these bills take a couple of years to take hold, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. In fact, this year, for instance, of the 3,500 bills that were introduced, 165 bills were bills that were in last year. So they come back, and issues that have some real significance in changing policy generally take multiple years, normally 2 or 3 years. And it's just constantly reworking. This particular bill, it'll come back in concept because the sponsor of the legislation is convinced bias is a real problem. She wants to address it. It was a priority issue for the Black Caucus in the House. And they really believe there's an issue here. They finally also agreed that there was a problem at the federal level with air regulations, And no matter what we tried to do, we had to comply with the federal regulations. And once you do that, we couldn't accomplish what she wanted. And believe me, we tried. We prepared multiple sets of amendments. Um, we reworked some of the other language in the bill. We really made an effort to try to get what she was looking for, but it just wasn't going to happen in concept. The other issue was there was legislation at the federal level
Right.
that could also have an impact. So we kind of left that issue at let's see what happens in Congress. Maybe there'll be some changes there, and we can go back and take another look at the legislative draft that we had completed, though we didn't think we should pursue it, but that could be the basis of beginning some more dialogue on that issue. Maybe there's a way of reaching some kind of consensus.
Right. So we supported the bill, but
Right.
just not the way that it was written,
Right.
and also ultimately what needed to happen to protect the consumer, number one, but also the industry as a whole, which affects the consumer.
Shawn, it was so
Yeah.
serious. It was so serious that had this bill passed, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would no longer purchase loans
That's right.
because they were out of compliance. And,
Yeah.
and that's more than just handcuffs on it. I mean, there's no conventional mortgage financing, and we had to push on that point very, very, very hard. But it was heard, obviously.
Yeah. So this might be Dennis, but Rich as well. You can chime in. Summarize the session from like an industry aspect, and then Dennis, just based on what you saw, were there any surprises, like positively or negatively, that you noticed this year?
Shawn, there are always surprises every and more than one generally. I think the session on hold in total wasn't what it was expected to be. Normally, the last year of a 4-year term, this is an election year. You find legislators want to introduce less legislation, not more. They don't want to introduce legislation that's controversial. This year, they didn't want to do anything about raising taxes. So we didn't expect the high level of activity that we saw. The other factor was that the House elected new leadership. We had a new speaker that was elected about 1 month before the session started. So, you had a new speaker, which means new staff generally, and that occurred. Changes in leadership on the committees. We had some committee chair changes, reassigned committee members to different committees. So everybody really thought that would have slowed down the process, but it really didn't. There was a lot of controversial bills that came in. Like I said, 3,500 bills is a high number. It's a high volume for any legislative session. Of that, 882 bills were enacted. So a lot of new legislation coming down the pike. The governor has had one signing session. He'll have a couple others between now and the next 30 days or so. So there's still the possibility of vetoes. But it was a pretty active session. One thing to keep in mind during any session is, what are the other issues that are being considered by the General Assembly? Because that will absolutely have an impact on issues that we believe may be important simply because they don't allocate the time necessary to move the bill because they're working on other issues like the state's budget deficit. The budget dominated the session this year, totally dominated the session. Energy was really a big issue. Healthcare was a big issue. Issues dealing with juvenile crime, immigration, the Community Trust Act, all those kind of issues really percolate to the top of what's important. And oftentimes it's a challenge to get interest generated on issues that we may have an interest in passing. The good thing is if you have issues that you want to reject, that we don't want to support, that's great because it gets lost in the shuffle. But if it's something that you really want to try to get enacted, you got to take into consideration what else is going on, in the General Assembly, what issues are being considered and what's dominating everybody's attention.
Hey, yeah, thanks for that. And so, speaking of, what we support or not, Rich, how do we get our information and determine where we put our focus as it relates to our committee at the MMBBA?
Well, we get the bills that uh, at the advice of Dennis's office that we should look at, and we go through. We read the bills. We go through them. We try to understand them, and see, is this going to have an impact on the way MMBBA operates, does business, our consumers, our members, and all that. So that's really where it starts. And we'll have a discussion on our call on Monday and get feedback from, those people. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to, to read the bills and understand them. And we'll take our position and then we'll decide, what approach we're going to take. And are we going to testify? Are we going to watch it? Are we going to, submit a written, oral, whatever? That happens every single week. And as Dennis said, it was a good session for the MMBBA. I mean, we didn't really lose any battle at all, and that's a good thing. A lot of the legislation that we would have opposed never came to a vote at all. I guess the bills failed because the hearings were canceled. I mean, is that the way you would put it?
Yeah, I think what happens, there's a lot of lobbying that goes what I refer to as back room. It doesn't happen at the hearing, doesn't happen when you have formal testimony. It's working the leadership and working legislators prior to anything being scheduled on the bill. So hopefully we make an effort, if we're opposed to legislation, we make an effort to basically not move the bill. The chairman have the authority to create the agenda. So if you can convince the chairman, we don't support this bill, we're going to oppose it, this is why, they can be convinced, fine, we're not going to have a hearing on the bill, and it just stays in the committee. So a lot of that happens beyond that. I wanted to mention, while you're speaking to that, Rich, that we identified 93 legislative initiatives that were of priority interest to MMBBA. And we track those just to see what's going on. And again, this is how we interact with members of the legislature. Of that, we supported 15 bills and opposed 13. And our position, as best I can determine, prevailed on every one of those issues. So there was no surprises for us. We basically accomplished, what we wanted. I mean, just to go back real quick on the appraisal bill, there were lots of interested advocacy groups come in and support the bill with amendments. The difference was, to my knowledge, we were the only ones really offering and working with the sponsor on amendments. And if I'm the sponsor of the bill and you say you support my bill with amendments, my first question is, where are your amendments? And we were really leading the charge on that and did most of that work with our legislative committee, and then working with the sponsors. And it makes a difference.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time. You all did, Rich, a tremendous amount of time, and obviously you too, Dennis. I sat on many of those Monday calls. Don't say a lot. I kind of just listen to try to understand to make sure that I know what's happening. But like you mentioned, like you got bills that are coming. Beginning of the week, we read through them all. on Mondays have a really uh, in-depth discussion. There's attorneys on the call. There are title company leads. There are mortgage bankers and brokers that are on the call. And it's not just the three of us on there. It's a whole team dedicated to this. So that's where I kind of scratched my head once I kind of figured out like the benefits of what we do at MMBBA. So like, for instance, our members, right? They could go out and lobby for themselves for whatever it is that they're looking for directly for themselves, but like we put together like a collective, so to speak, where we're a lobbying arm for all the members that are in the state of Maryland that are doing mortgages. They can participate and lobby where there's strength in numbers. And so yeah, absolutely. You guys spend a ton of time on that. I'm not going to ask any more questions, right? Rich, I know you're super prepared for this and well prepared. If you guys have about 10 more minutes or so, let's keep talking, and we'll wrap up. But what is it that you'd like to add, Rich, to this conversation that maybe we haven't touched on?
Well, a couple things. One, I quickly mention a couple of bills that didn't make it. One of them was a transfer tax bill, increased transfer taxes. That bill comes up in some way, shape, or form just about every year, I would say, and it didn't make it. And one of the interesting things is the collaboration that we have with Maryland Realtors. They have their lobbyists, they have their agendas. Oftentimes they're common with us, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they have issues that just don't affect us. But things like transfer taxes and increasing home ownership through more new construction and zoning and things like that, we will tend to work with them and support them as they do us. If they know that it's going to hurt their constituency, they're in on it with us. So that's a pretty important thing. We aren't necessarily going this alone. There was another bill that it was entitled surveillance-based pricing, and that did not make it. Essentially, they're calling a credit report and the information in it, i.e. the credit score, surveillance. And it therefore affects, interest rates and things like that. But it's not something for the state to decide. It doesn't work. And so we ask to be exempted from that. If they want to have surveillance pricing and other things, that's fine. But it does not work in the mortgage industry at all. Of course, we supported the Department of Housing and Community Development's budget requests. I think there was, there was some disclosure bills, not of significance, but not necessary, and those didn't make it either. I think we had, as Dennis said, a real good year. And Dennis's credibility, I can't speak to that enough. When the legislators start calling Dennis and wanting to learn, that's a victory for us. Honestly, it's a victory. So it goes on. And to the audience here today, we'd love to have more of you join the committee. And bring, your knowledge of the business. Just sit and listen, share. Many of you know legislators and can assist us when we need somebody to reach out. It's certainly not just me or Dennis, but it's the whole committee. And I don't know what part two of that question was, Shawn, but
No, I just wanted you to touch on some things that you wanted to bring up today that we haven't discussed. And so you did that. And Dennis, do you have anything that we might have missed that's important to talk about before we wrap?
Yeah, real quick, the governor did introduce a pretty comprehensive housing initiative package of bills. they passed. They were amended pretty aggressively by the committees, but it did address some of the issues that deal with squatters and their rights, or not no rights as it may be. It also dealt with the whole zoning issue. Once zoning's established and you start to build new housing, for instance, you can't change the zoning in the middle of the development process. So it establishes some statewide standards for that. It encourages development around mass transit, which has been lacking in Maryland over a number of years. It allows for smaller lots and therefore smaller homes, so you can get higher density. There's a real push, obviously, to improve the affordability housing uh, uh, arena. And, Maryland has a deficit in housing. I mean, it's clearly that's an issue. Um, I get a lot of questions oftentimes about the the tech tax last year that was passed on technology services. Last year in that budget, they had projected $500 million in new revenue. Well, what they actually collected was 35 million. And it's because companies that or large companies that are doing that, providing those kind of services, left Maryland. I mean, they just left. They weren't going to pay that tax. So that really exasperated the budget deficit. So this year in the budget, we have a balanced budget, but the deficit, the structured deficit of the budget really hasn't changed much. So unless there's some other changes to be made, in 3 years, we'll be up to a $3.5 billion deficit. So I would suspect next year there's going to be the budget's going to become a major issue, and they're going to have to be able to identify new sources of revenue, just not making administrative changes within the budget itself. That's something that we need to watch pretty closely.
Go ahead, Rich.
No, Dennis, you please finish up.
No, that's
okay. Our group is not always playing defense. Pardon? No, our group is not always playing defense, and over the years we have brought some real successes of opening up things in the industry, things that we did for veterans and their taxes and how they're paid in Maryland, and that was a huge positive move for veterans who have disabilities and are exempt. And there's been other examples through time of positive moves that we've made. So if anybody in the audience or an MBA has things that they see could benefit the industry that maybe we can't do now, bring them to us. We can look and talk about it. That's how ideas are born and legislation comes to pass. And we've had some success doing it. We're looking at possibly addressing the reverse mortgage scenario again, which you can't do in Maryland on a conventional basis. So if anybody has any ideas, please share them with us. We'll kick it around and see if we can and have some positive initiatives rather than just be a defense organization. We're going to be both, but give us something to work with. We can find sponsors and we can just explore those opportunities.
Rich, that's a great request. It's good to not only be defensive, but to be proactive.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we can take two positions or different positions on legislation and can generate support on a proactive basis. So that's a good request to make, and it would really help, I think, as we pursue the agenda next year.
That's gold. I was going to ask the both of you to give me a takeaway, but that's a takeaway.
Yeah.
That's a takeaway, is to be proactive. One thing that we implemented is we looked at the maps in which our board, where they live, identified like who the legislators and such are in the areas, and then pass that along to Dennis to help understand who's got relationships and such, and what are some of the issues in the areas in and around where we live. So I'd say being proactive is definitely the key takeaway. So both of you been super generous with your time today. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation, much needed. I wish more and more people knew about the level of time, energy, and effort that we put into this, and some of the wins that we received, even like when things don't pass, so either pass or fail, if that makes any sense, it still ends up being a win for our industry, because we're, like Dennis said earlier, we have a seat at the table. And so, Rich and Dennis, thank you both for your leadership throughout the session, for taking the time to walk our members through this today. For everybody watching, this is exactly why advocacy matters. These outcomes directly impact how we operate, how our clients and how our industry continues to evolve. So, excuse me, MMBBA will continue to stay engaged as implementation begins. As we mentioned, being proactive, and we'll keep members informed every step of the way. So be sure. So the two of you, if you can hang on the line with me real quick, and I'm going to close, but be sure to stay connected with us for updates and for future episodes of MMBBA Live. I'm Shawn Williams. Thank you, Dennis Rasmussen and Rich Green today. And thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you both.